following program is suitable for all ages.
Buffone. A certain magic will always linger with the very name. It speaks of courage and fervor in the world's most brutal game. 55, worn by Doug Buffone, a Chicago Bear through and through. He demanded excellence of himself and anyone wearing navy blue.
You tell me what's going on. This is moronic. We're going to get our whipped all the way down the line. I want somebody to get kicked in the and get out there and play. You're getting paid to play this game. I'm playing right. I don't mind you getting beat. I got my whipped many times. But I tell you, I took somebody down with me. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
Football fans, this is Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55. I'm your host, John Buffone. This is a show that takes a unique look at Chicago Bears football. The Bears going down to New Orleans, trying to get back to 500 when they take on the New Orleans Saints. Going to be a good test for the Bears. If you've never listened to this podcast before and you don't know how it works, I'm going to send it over to my producer, Aldo Gandia. I'll tell them how the show works.
Well, it's very simple. I'm going to ask John 5 questions about the Chicago Bears, 5 questions about their upcoming opponent, in this case, the New Orleans Saints, and he has 55 seconds to answer each question. The reason for 55? Because 55 was the number worn by Doug Buffone, my childhood hero and John's uncle.
All right, Aldo, let's get into it. I'm ready to break apart this Saints matchup.
Well, you know, before we get started, I want to tell you that I went back into our show library to get your win-loss record. I don't know if you've been keeping track of how many times you've correctly predicted the outcome of the Bears game. Do you know what your record is?
I don't like to break things down as far as numbers go. I think I'm probably close to. I'm around the Bears mark. I would say 500, maybe a little under that.
A little under. Actually, we didn't do a show prior to the first game, so you're 2-4. And I'm going to give you that first week because most people were picking the Falcons to beat the Bears. So I've got you at 3-4, and so I got a question before we begin the actual premise of the show, the 55 seconds. So take as long as you want on this question. Do you think that this current Chicago Bears team is a below 500 team, an at 500 team, or above a 500 team once the season is over with? What are your thoughts?
I think they're an at or possibly below 500 team. Last week, I did lay out the pipe dream of getting to 9-7, possibly stealing the division in 17. That was in week 17. That was really fun to talk about. But I think right now they have a real chance at 8-8 after taking the game against Carolina, which I predicted them to lose, and they proved me wrong, which I'm glad they did. I think their floor right now should probably be 8-8. They should be able to beat the Packers without Aaron Rodgers. They should be able to beat the 49ers and the Browns. I would hope they could split with the Lions, maybe go into Cincy and win a game. I think the floor right now, I'm coming around. I'm normally cynical when it comes to this kind of stuff, just because I've been snake bitten so much. But I think realistically we could look at an 8-8 team and maybe slide into that 9-7 range. Now, am I getting ahead of myself? Probably, but I think the floor right now should be around 8-8.
Okay, well, that's interesting. And also, let me tell our fans who are listening in, if they want to stop by our mixlr.com chat page, just look for the link on @Bears Barroom on Twitter or our Facebook page. I just posted it. You can go to just type in Bears Barroom in the Facebook search page, and it should come up. Are you ready, John?
Let's get into it. I'm ready.
All right. Just as a reminder, after 55 seconds, you will hear this whistle, and that's your cue to run things down. All right. First question on the Bears. One of the main topics of discussion this week has been the Bears' approach to winning football games. Under quarterback Mitch Trubisky, they are 2-1, but with each game, they are restricting the quarterback's pass attempts. What do you make of this bubble-wrapped approach to developing Trubisky? Do you think it's really necessary to win football games? or necessary to properly develop this quarterback who only has one season as a starting quarterback in college? John, you're on the clock.
Well, I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. In fact, they're not going to be able to be mutually exclusive much longer. The defense is outscoring the offense in the last 2 weeks, and I don't think those numbers can be consistent. I don't think they're going to be able to rely on their defense to score points for them. So if they really want to be competitive, they need to take advantage of what the defense is actually doing and setting them up to do. Whenever they got a turnover on the punt return to midfield last week, I tweeted out, well, this is the defense really setting up a great chance for the Bears to punt and switch the field. So, I mean, how does a quarterback get better by handing the ball off 3 times and then jogging off the field? Are they worried about his cardio? So I think that they need to unwrap him a little bit. I mean, this is a guy that you want to see develop. I don't know how you throw in 7 passes in a game really develops anybody. I don't know how you don't let him consistently throw the ball really helps his development. So I don't think they're going to be able to do this bubble wrap approach much longer if they want to stay competitive in games.
Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot on our other shows and on social media. It is frustrating, particularly when you see how Shane Marsaw, who we refer to as the smartest man in the barroom, he mentioned on one of our earlier shows that Carson Wentz threw for over 600 passes in his rookie year. And then I did the math. If we kind of prorated Trubisky's pass attempts for over a 16-game schedule based on what he has now, it's about 200 or so. So it's a very, very conservative approach. Let's hope that things open up a little bit.
Let's hope.
All right, question number 2 on the Bears side of the show. Now, last week, you and I talked about Ryan Pace being negligent at providing adequate strength at the wide receiver position. He allowed Alshon Jeffrey to leave, and he thought that Cam Meredith and Kevin White could carry the load. Now, we learned that the recently released Deontay Thompson, who is now a Buffalo Bill, in his very first game, he caught 4 passes for 107 yards, including a crucial 44-yarder on the game-tying drive in a 30-27 win over Tampa Bay. Now, my goodness, are the Bears inept at identifying good wide receivers? What's going on here? You're on the clock.
Well, obviously they're inept in looking at wide receivers, but you look at the long history of terrible receiving, yeah, it's easy to come to that conclusion. Thompson didn't show a whole lot here. I mean, I guess I could understand the cut. They did go out and get Dontrell Inman for a 7th rounder. I guess that's worth the roll of the dice for a 7th rounder. He's 28 years old, got a big body at 6'3", 205 pounds. He hasn't done much this year, but when Keenan Allen was out for the Chargers last year, he did see 94 targets. He brought in 58 balls, 810 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I think the Bears would be really happy with production like that. As of right now, fans are still clamoring for a trade. Martavis Bryant is the hot name out there. But being in the Pittsburgh pipeline, the Bears have tried Steelers retreads before. I think the most successful one's probably Jim Miller, and that's not setting the bar very high. You look at Matt Spaeth, that 6'7" tight end they brought in for a cup of coffee before he went back to Pittsburgh. Remember the Santonio Holmes project, the Cordell Stewart project. Marcus Wheaton really hasn't worked out too much, so I'm not huge on Steelers retreads. But I don't think it matters who they're evaluating if you're only dropping back to pass the ball 7 times and you're only completing 1 pass to a receiver, and it's Tanner Gentry. I mean, the recent history of receivers hasn't been great. Probably their best core was with Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall. But since the turn of the century, the Bears have had to be cool with having guys like Marty Booker, who did have a 100 reception season in 01, Musa Muhammad, Bernard Berrien, Devin Aramashadu, Earl Bennett. These were all number 1 receivers at one point for the Bears. So this isn't something out of the ordinary. So it's an issue and it needs addressed. But I mean, it's kind of par for the course right now.
Yeah, you're naming all those names. I was looking for my sound effect of a man crying because wow, what a list. Let me ask you a quick follow-up question to that. Now, I was reading up that Inman is a really good locker room influence, the gentleman they picked up from the Chargers. And, this goes along with Ryan Pace's plan of bringing in guys who are good leaders in the locker room, good guys. But would you like to see that theory suspended and maybe Pace go after a guy who's had some problems in the past, like a Josh Gordon or the guy out in Pittsburgh, Martavis Bryant?
I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. I think that what they saw with Brandon Marshall here was he was an immense talent who really did shake up the locker room, which there wasn't a whole lot of. And you didn't really have a great ringleader when you had Mark Trestman trying to rein everybody in. So if you feel like you're confident that John Fox can rein in a locker room, maybe you go out and get that guy. But, I mean, Martavis Bryant has had his fair share of problems on and off the field. He's worried about his production on the field, and meanwhile, this is a guy that's one doobie away from never playing football again in his life. So I think you got to be really careful when you start looking at these guys. Do the ends justify the means? Yeah,
absolutely. All right, question number 3 on the Bears side of things. Now, there are parts of the Bears offense that rank among the very, very worst in the NFL. I'm going to give you 4 categories that the Bears are ranked 28th or worse, and you tell me which one of these categories concerns you the most heading into the Saints game. Now, in total yards per game, they're ranked 30th. Total passing yards per game, 31st. First downs per game, they're tied for 30th. And in third down efficiency, they're 28th. John, which one you think is going to be a huge factor if they don't correct against the Saints? You are on the clock.
Sounds like an offensive juggernaut to me. First and foremost, it's got to be the first downs. You said they're tied for 30th. That's alarming because your strength is supposed to be your defense, and you're hoping to contain the Saints' offense this week. Your defense is getting no rest if you run, probably run again, maybe throw, and maybe you toss it over to your running back to throw a pass or something like that. And then you go into punting formation. If the Saints score on a long drive and your offense chews up all of a minute and 40 seconds, and then you send the defense right back out there, they're going to be dragging. I don't care if you have the 85 Bears. I don't care if you have a track team as your defense. They're going to get tired, and they're going to start giving up points. And that obviously plays into the third down efficiency as well. If nothing else, stay on the field a little bit longer, give the defense a breather, maybe get the ball near midfield and try to win the field position game, but you cannot continue to just go out there, chew up a minute, maybe 2 minutes, run, and punt, and try to win the field position game with your punter, and then the defense is going to be dragging. You're also going to have some really ticked off guys on defense wondering why they're only getting about a 2-minute break in between drives.
Yeah, I was really worried last week when that defense was out on the field so long against Cam Newton and the Panthers, but they held on. So, but you're making some great points there. Now, it doesn't take a football scholar to know that in order for the Bears to win against the Saints in New Orleans, it starts with this Bears defense shutting down this high-powered Drew Brees offense. Now, how does the Bears D match up against the Saints offense? You're on the clock.
I mean, I think this Bears defense matches up well with basically anyone right now, and I'm really, really excited to be able to say that. But the Saints have a great young receiver in Michael Thomas. They need to contain 35 receptions for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns so far. But, I mean, it's really their running backs. The way they kind of get them into the game plan, they're very dynamic running backs. You look at the rookie Alvin Kamara, he has 28 receptions. Mark Ingram, he has 24 receptions. So you cannot lose the running backs in the backfield. Even if they're not running the ball, you got to make sure that they're not flaring out on some of those swing passes. Maybe you see less blitzing this week. Maybe you see a little more Leonard Floyd taking away those flare routes, because those are daggers sometimes. When it's second and short and they do those swing passes and they get some blocking on the edge there, those can be killer. So you look at Drew Brees, 1,600 yards so far, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 2 interceptions came last week against Green Bay, and the other 2 came the week before against Detroit. So he's in a little bit of a rut of throwing interceptions, which we have seen in the past. He had 17 interceptions 5 times in his career, which includes a 22 interception 2010 season. He had 15 last year. So it looks like there's going to be some more opportunities to create turnovers this week, which obviously the Bears are going to have to rely on heavily to win football games. So I think a lot of the time styles make fights, and that's coming from an old boxer like myself. So we'll see what Vic Fangio kind of dials up against Sean Payton. But like I said, I like the way the Bears match up against basically anybody.
Well, I'm going to listen to your predictions at the end of the show and see if you predict a pick 6 or a couple of interceptions for this Bears defense. It's going to be interesting. Now, pick for our final question on the Bears half of the show, pick for us a defender whose performance this season has really impressed you, and another Bears player that you'd like to see their performance improve. And again, we're talking about the defense here. So you're on the clock, 55 seconds.
I mean, I couldn't be happier with the defense right now. I mean, the line has been really impressive. I love Akeem Hicks, but I expected him to play like this. So, honestly, the guy I'm most impressed with is Kyle Fuller. The dude has been balling out. It looks like this guy is more on a seek and destroy kind of mentality, more than overthinking things and, trying not to get in his own way. He made a tackle last week in the backfield, and he was jawing at the Panthers afterwards, and it's so apparent that he's playing with so much more confidence, and that's what corners have to do. If you look at some of the great ones in the league, like Richard Sherman, Josh Norman, guys like that, they're They're playing with a high level of confidence. So I could not be more impressed with Kyle Fuller. Like we talked about last week, he's going into a contract year because the Bears didn't pick up the option. So we'll see where they want to go with him. But I can't really find a guy to pick out that I'd like to see play a lot better. I mean, Pernell McPhee is basically healthy. He's playing well. Adrian Amos is flourishing. Makamara is playing well. Floyd's progressing every week. If I have to nitpick, I guess Mitch Unrein, just because I don't hear his name as much whenever I'm watching the game. But 17 combined tackles, 0.5 sacks. Really, I have no serious qualms with the defense right now.
Yeah, actually, Unrein hasn't played that poorly. But the interesting thing is that we may see his snaps decrease because apparently Jonathan Bullard is getting better and better with that glute injury that he had, and he actually had more snaps this past week than Unrein for the first time, and so we may see Bullard play more and more, which would be great because we were really high on him when he was drafted in the third round a year ago, so we'd love to see that return on that investment. All right, now next week we're going to talk.
That depth is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now next week we're going to talk about the offensive side, guys that you'd like to see improve and so forth. So we may have to give you more. Yeah, we may have to give you a lot more than 55 seconds for that part of the show. All right, we're going into the second half now. These 5 questions are tailored on the New Orleans Saints. Their first one. Now, it does seem that head coach Sean Payton is transforming the Saints offense from that high-powered offense that we were accustomed to seeing to a more balanced approach. For instance, last week they threw 38 times and they ran 36. What do you know about this Saints offense and this modification that we're seeing this season? You're on the clock.
Well, I think you look at their quarterback. He's 38, soon to be 39. You don't want to have to ride him as much as you have in the past. But I also think it's a shift of assets. They have really good running backs, like I said before, in Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, and a guy they're so deep there that they felt like they could get rid of Adrian Peterson. So this isn't exactly the old Saints team that are led by Pierre Thomas or Chris Ivory. Those are suitable running backs. They're okay. They're serviceable. But these guys are really, really talented and dynamic who they got now. Ultimately, I think it comes down to a change of personnel. They don't have Brandon Cooks. They don't have Willie Snead for one reason or another. Maybe they're not trying to push the ball down the field as much, which means more plays, which means more short routes, which leads to more second and third down and shorts, which also means more running plays. So I think you're seeing a lot more sustainable drives, which means a third and short, which means you run the ball more. And like I said, change of personnel, and they're hoping to probably cut down on turnovers too. You don't really want to hang your defense out to dry, and if you're not turning the ball over and you're not so sure about your defense, that's the best thing you can hope for, is sustainability on offense. Keep the defense off the field.
No, I totally agree with what you just said, and that part about the defense. Boy, that defense for the Saints was just heavily taxed the last few years. They'd get on the field, because Drew would take the team down the field and score quickly, and that defense would hardly get a breather. And so that might be a big motivation for Coach Payton. All right. Question number 2. Now, we know that 3 weeks ago, the Saints traded away Adrian Peterson to the Arizona Cardinals. And since then, the running back you've mentioned a couple of times, Mark Ingram, he's been on fire. And he's rushed for over 100 yards in successive weeks and wins against the Lions and Packers. Now, Doug Buffone always used to say, you've got to commit to stopping the run. True or false? Does that have to be the formula this week against Drew Brees? Despite the fact that they're playing on a more balanced approach, do you focus still on stopping the run first, or against Drew Brees, do you focus more on the pass? You are on the clock.
I think you focus on the run first. And normally, if you hear, we got to make Drew Brees beat us, most of the time he's going to beat you. But I think if you take away the run game without having to commit any extra guys into the box, that means you aren't going to get burnt over the top when they draw up a play action, which we've seen plenty of times. So I think this actually comes down to being disciplined and not getting over anxious to make a play. Like I said before, you can't let those swing passes go for big gains. We can see sometimes when you're bringing pressure off the edge and there's no one out there to take away the swing passes, those can go for a long gain. We saw Kyle Fuller last week. The only blemish from last week, I think, is he dove for an interception, and it ended up going through his hands, and it was a significant gain for Carolina. So I think you got to bottle up the run game and don't get out of your mind on a road in a hostile environment in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. That's a hard place to play. I can't emphasize that enough. That is a true home field advantage for the New Orleans Saints. So make sure when you get to Ingram, you do bring him down. He's had about 45 yards after contact, but he only really broke one tackle last week. So I think you got to make sure when you do hit him, he goes down. You got to stay. I think this is just basically staying in your lanes and making sure you're taking care of all the assignments.
I don't have any stats to back this up, but I do think my eye test says that the Bears have been better and better at tackling. They're
swarming. They're swarming really well. Last week you saw it once on the point of contact. They were only there for about a half second before there was about 4 or 5 more guys there. They're doing a great job at swarming to the ball this year, and I don't know how you statistically break that down, but it does pass the eye test of swarming to the ball a little bit better.
I love it. All right. Let's talk about the Saints defense. Now, they usually have a pretty good run defense, but last week the Packers rookie running back Aaron Jones, he ran all over them for 131 yards and a touchdown. Are we destined to see another Bears offensive game plan with a heavy ratio of run to pass? And if so, is this smart football? John, you're on the clock.
I think John Fox and Dowell Loggins look at this and are probably overjoyed that they have an excuse to run the ball to the point of nausea this week. So, yeah, it's a good sign. You'd love to see Jordan Howard set a tone and make New Orleans pack the box. Normally, that would open up opportunities for your quarterback, but we'll see if the quarterback training wheels made the trip to New Orleans with the Bears and if they're actually going to let the quarterback throw. At some point, Trubisky has to throw the ball. By the way, how stupid does that sound? Eventually, the quarterback has to throw the ball. What kind of a conversation do we have here? Eventually, you'd like to see the quarterback throw the ball. Well, duh. But I think in an ideal world, they soften up the Saints with the run game. But who knows? I mean, but guess who else is kind of seeing this coming? The Saints D. So if I'm the Saints defense and I don't have a whole lot of film on Trubisky, I'm sure as heck putting 8, maybe 9 in the box and make him prove that you need to respect him. So if he can't make the throws, you start throwing the kitchen sink at the run game, and maybe you're going to see a really bad offensive effort from the Bears, because if the Saints say, go ahead and pass it, go ahead, try it, we're going to blitz everyone, and then the Bears still don't, it's going to be a long day.
It is going to be an interesting chess match down there. All right, now the Saints D, they did start the season terribly with their defense. The first 2 games, they allowed more than 1,000 yards, 65 points, and what to me is an astonishing passer rating of 141.4. Now, what's happened to this defense that they've become so much better in their current 4-game winning streak? John, you're on the clock.
Well, I don't know if they're playing. I mean, they are playing better, and they got a fantastic rookie in Marshawn Lattimore, one of the highest grades you've seen for a rookie in the first 7 weeks of a career. But let's go over the last 4 weeks. They played the Panthers, the Dolphins, the Lions, and the Packers without Aaron Rodgers. Those are all struggling offenses. Like I said, no Rodgers for Green Bay last week, and they had to win a 52-38 game over the Lions. That's not exactly a defensive masterpiece. Marvin Jones and Golden Tate each had 100 yards receiving and a touchdown in that game. Like you said, they gave up 130 yards on the ground to Green Bay last week. And let's shift this back to the Saints offense. In those first 2 losses of the season, they averaged 19.5 points. In these last 4 wins, they've averaged 30 points per game on offense. So I mean, the offense is still the main focal point of this team. So I think it's all about, look at the last 4 weeks. They haven't had a whole lot of, and it's not like the Bears are a juggernaut compared to these guys either. So you might see some of that continue. But I think a lot of it has to do with the schedule, because they had to play the Patriots in the first part of the year too. So I think they caught a break in the last couple weeks as far as going on defense.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think think a lot of people often forget to look at the schedule when they're talking about stats and team performance and player performance. And that's kind of a vital thing that the numbers do lie about at times. Okay, our fifth and final question about the Saints before we get your prediction on the game. Now, this week on our Bears Barroom Radio Network podcast, we debuted a new rap song produced by Phil Atoshan named Firefox. It's all part of the Barroom's effort to let the people at Hallis Hall know that they can do better at head coach than John Fox. Like, for instance, somebody named Sean Payton. Now, after the season, Payton still has 3 years remaining on that big contract he signed a couple of seasons ago, but this past year, there were rumors that the Saints might be interested in negotiating a trade for the head coach. And with Drew Brees approaching 40, like you mentioned earlier in the show, maybe Payton would love to work with his old friend Ryan Pace. Now, is a trade for a head coach like Sean Payton even something the Bears should consider? John, you're on the clock.
It's not a plan, but an anthem, right? It's a fun thought, and I always love entertaining this kind of stuff because this is what makes sports fun. I think if you're going to go out and try to trade for a coach, that all depends on the price. Remember, the Buccaneers paid 2 first-rounders and 2 second-rounders, basically, for John Gruden, and it did get them a Super Bowl. But the Bucs were a Tony Dungy coached team that were probably in a better position to win than the Bears are right now. Can they do better than Fox? Yeah. Are they playing it super ultra safe right now to maybe save their jobs and show progression and show that the progression to 8-8 is worth keeping them around? Probably. But I think they need to take a good look at this because I think they need to keep Fangio. I think Vic Fangio's done a fantastic job with the defense. You don't really want to rock that boat because that is your foundation right now. Fire Fox. Yeah, go ahead. Fire Fox. But I think you fortify Fangio. You keep him in. You got to keep him in and bring in an offensive mind. At the very least, bring in an offensive coordinator that actually likes offense. Bring in a guy that actually wants to game plan on something other than saying, well, let's see if we can run the ball and take up some time and not have to try to actually do some work. So I'm all for replacing him. Maybe if you can trade for Sean Payton, yeah, sure, why not? Just don't mortgage everything for it.
Can't we do like a mid-season trade for Sean Payton?
Oh man, it's going to take a lot.
That would be a first in NFL history, huh? And that is kind of a conundrum for the Bears. It would be great to see Vic Fangio remain with the team into next season. Now, this is the final year of his contract, so he'd have to be extended. But clearly, you want the new head coach to pick whoever he wants on his staff. So it's the only time I've seen that not happen in Bears history was, of course, when George Halas hired Buddy Ryan.
Yeah.
Exactly, and then hired head coach Mike Ditka. So be interesting to see what's going to happen in the future. But, boy, it would be nice to see somebody of the quality of a Sean Payton come in and manage this offense for the Chicago Bears. All right, this is the part of the show where we turn off the clock and we let you talk about your prediction, how you see this upcoming game going, which has become a really important game now because the Bears could get back into a reasonable playoff hunt if they come out with a road win. So what are your thoughts about this game and your prediction, please?
Oh boy, they're gonna need offense, and until they can, until the offense can pull their own weight, how can I expect them to beat an offense like the Saints? I mean, I was wrong last week, and I hope I'm wrong again this week. I'd be fine being wrong every week if it meant the Bears were gonna win. However, can we really expect the Bears defense to keep shutting teams down and putting points on the board? I don't think so. It's going to be hard to go into New Orleans and basically say, hey, defense, take care of this. And by the way, can you score 14 points for us? So I think that until they can really show that they're going to score points on offense, because they're going to have to at least show something this week if they want to stay competitive, I can't pick them on the road in New Orleans. I'm going to say Saints 24, Bears 16, and I hate doing that. I really do hate picking up against the Bears, but I will say the Saints come out with about an 8-point victory here. Like I said, hope I'm wrong, but we will see. And before we go, I just want to say that if you like this show and you like talking about the Bears, you can go to Bears Barroom Network. We offer a variety of different shows. Actually, Aldo, this week you're going to have CEO, founder of FootballGamePlan.com, Emery Hunt, on Bears on Tap Friday morning. He's a Saints expert. Everything you want to know about the Saints and see how the Bears can maybe take advantage of some things, you can definitely check that out. That's going to be a good one. And if you want to subscribe to the Bears Barroom Network, all you got to do is go to podbean.com, go to the search bar, type in Bears Barroom. Of course, we're going to pop up from there. You can download it to any of your podcast delivery channels. You can listen to us right there on your phone. We're going to be with you wherever you go. You can do the same with iTunes. Type in Bears Barroom. There you go. And we also have a YouTube channel. If that's your thing, we offer up analysis on all the Bears players. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter. That's the best place to reach us. That's the most fun that we have, probably, at Bears Barroom. And then you can also add me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter for all my snarky and sometimes moronic remarks at JD Buffone. Once again, JD Douglas is the middle name. JD Buffone, also at Bears Barroom. Follow us on Twitter. It's going to be an interesting ride in New Orleans this week. But until that time comes, that's going to do it for Buffone 55. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to see you next week during the bye week. We'll see you next time.